Welcome to Camera Ready and Abel, the podcast that explores the intersection of media change and personal growth. I'm your host, Barbara Barna Abel, and my calling is to help you tap into your superpowers to thrive on camera and in life, and make an impact on the world. This episode is brought to you by the phrase, make it your own, which Merriam-Webster defines as to adapt something to oneself so that it belongs to oneself. Making it your own is essential in the Camera Ready universe. And here to discuss is one of my favorite humans and repeat champion, Sean Simone. Sean is a casting director and TV hosting coach who has cast all of the hosts for QVC and HSN for the past 15 years, as well as worked for major brands in the beauty, fashion, cook, and tech space. Welcome back, Sean. Oh, and I forgot to mention you work a lot in home. Welcome back.
Thank you. This is our fourth conversation.
It is in the podcast. It's a four-peat. That is correct. And I actually, Sean, before we dive into our conversation, I want to let listeners know, if you are listening to the podcast in early 2023, Sean and I are offering our acclaimed hosting for home shopping and brands online workshop, February 11th and 12th via Zoom. Details are up on my website, abelintermedia.com. And it's important to point out because we haven't run the class for almost a year. And so it's a fabulous and rare occurrence, and it always sells out. So I want to encourage people to book their spot because it's always small, hands-on, and impactful. So we'd love to have you. So circling back to the podcast, you've discussed previously authenticity, entertaining, and owning it. So I want to find out why you want to talk about making it your own this time.
Well, I reached out to you because when I work with people as a TV host coach, that's the four big things that I really work through. And making your own is so important. I felt like we haven't really chatted about it yet, and I want the listeners to hear, because we talk a lot about owning it all the time, but I feel like making it your own is completely different. And that to me is what really makes it we're talking about talent specifically, get to the next step. When someone is making it their own, for me, is when I kind of sit up straight and I start to listen a little bit more, and my clients start to get a little bit more excited when we see people sort of breaking away from what they think we want to see, and they are just being themselves, which is sort of bouncing off. We talked about authenticity and all that stuff, but this to me is the sort of the final step, and I think the most important one if we're talking about how do you get a call back in the TV hosting space or as an actor. It's sort of stepping out of what they think we want to see and making it their own.
I love this. And you know what, before we go on, I actually want to point out to anybody listening who says, but I'm not a TV host and I'm not auditioning, because I actually think to make it your own is essential if you're doing keynote speech in any kind of presentation, because in the audition space, what you're talking about to get to the next level is you want to successfully make the sale in the room. And that's no different to anything else. Like, we're all talent. And we're all kind of auditioning in our own way all the time. And so what you're talking about here and how to make it your own is relevant when you're taking any kind of material and internalizing it and then sharing it again. So first of all, talk about the distinction between owning it and making it your own, because you referenced it a second ago.
Making it your own is really when you start to really truly grab my attention or anybody's attention. And that's because it's specific to you. Whereas owning it is sort of, I feel, a little bit more general. Like, you walk in the room, you own the room, you set the temperature. There's lots of things going on, where when you make it your own, it is specific to Barbara and Sean or whoever else we're talking about. Like, it has to be that very fine tuned. And that's where I think when I start to really, that grabs my attention. And I do it even for myself. Like, I feel like, when I talk to clients and the way I run my business and the way I cast is very different than the way you run your business, the way you talk to clients and the way you cast. And they hire Barbara because they want Barbara Barna Abel. They hire Sean Simone because they want Sean Simone, the version of us. So you talked about, it's not just TV hosting or not just talent. Like, I make it my own every single day when I'm working. Like, the way I pick up the phone and call you to tell you have a call back is a very Sean Simone thing.
Oh, how do you do that?
it's just the way I act. It's the way I interact with people. It's the way I make people feel great. Or, it's a small little chit chat before we even get to the fact that you got your call back, versus just picking up the phone and saying, hey, here's what I need you to know. That's maybe the way somebody else does it, but I do it this way because this is the way I get the results. I get the results that I want by making it uniquely to myself. Like the way I do everything is just me.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you are coaching TV hosts, how do you walk someone through and or define make it your own?
So you're always going to get materials given to you to prepare for an audition or a callback. And I always tell people, take what you have been given and put your spin on it. Like it's your voice, right? It's the way you speak. It's if you don't like the words in that particular script, then change them. Because if you're speaking the way that you want to speak and say the way you want to say, you're going to be smiling, you're going to be having more fun. My clients are going to be more interested in you as a person, and you should make everything super personal as well. So if I do work with a lot of people, and when I'm coaching in advance, I say, hey, we're going to work on this script, but I want you to spend some time before we meet, and I want you to tweak it a little bit. I want you to make it your own. And people will come back with very safe changes. Like instead of a question mark, it's an exclamation point. And if instead of saying, that's amazing, I prefer to say, that's really cool. That's nice and all. But if you can make those changes even more personal, that's what we care about. And that's how I get to understand who people are in real life. So, like, make the changes specific to you. Like, if you love music, the changes should be related to music. If you love food, the changes should be related to food. Like, whatever you're in the room for, but also whatever like the copy entails, make it personal. Like, if, for example, I work with this copy and it's all about music and it references musicians. And people will say, they'll make a little bit of a change. I'm like, but did you ever go to an Elton John concert? Did you enjoy it? What's your favorite Elton John song? Then all of a sudden, they're inserting that into the copy or inserting that into the room or the audition or the interview, whatever it may be. And we start to care about you a little bit more. But let's talk about, like, say I'm going to go on a job interview. Like, of course, we're going to answer the questions, appropriately. But I want to steer my conversations with my clients, or if I'm meeting with somebody who's going to hire me, I want to steer the conversation in a very personal way that they get to know about me a little bit more. Like with anything like, oh my gosh, I really love, your wallpaper because when I was a kid, my mom had the same exact wallpaper. And all of a sudden, the conversation is no longer a job interview or no longer an audition. And that to me is making it your own. And people just don't realize that whether it's an audition or a job interview or a meeting, whatever it might be, or date, like there's no, it's like kind of like driving down a road and making lefts and making rights and not really understanding where you're going to head, right? Because in real life, you don't really know where you're going to actually end up, right? So that's why I wanted to talk about it, because it's not just audition oriented. It's like, feel like just life in general, like being different.
Oh, okay. I love all of that. And one of the things I'm hearing though is actually you're saying it's about making or deepening connection and adding value, which are really, really, really important things. And the vehicle to do that, or the process by which one does that, is by making it your own, by personalizing it, using I statements. It also then requires a little more effort, which you and I obviously believe in. Two, you just tapped into it. It's like understanding your points of differentiation and the things that make you special. So play to those, play to your strengths. And it does take a certain degree of self-awareness that not everybody starts with, and that's part of the power of the coaching process. It requires overcoming fear, because I'm sure you get this as much as I do. My favorite, am I allowed to say that?
Well, okay, so let's talk about that, because the biggest challenge for people is to not know that you can do that. Like, I'm talking specifically in an audition, right? As a TV host or an actor or whatever it may be, I give you permission to make it your own. I tell you that. But I also tell people, don't be afraid to ask in advance. Hey, Sean. Hey, Barbara. got this copy that I'm going to audition with tomorrow. Do you mind if I switch it up a little bit? I want to talk about, when I went to, this particular event that reminded me of this particular thing that we're talking about in the room. But that could even be on a date or a job interview. I think people, I'm glad you brought this up because I did want to go there. I think people are afraid of making things personal. And I don't know, just for me now, like, as I'm getting into my, what is it?
Mature years?
My mature years. Yes. And you knew where I was going. As I'm getting into my mature years, I'm like, screw it. Like, I only want to be 100% Sean the way I do it. It doesn't mean I'm going to be obnoxious.
Well, okay. I'm so glad you said that. And some people worry about that or causing offense. And that's one of the things I always address going, when someone asks, am I allowed to, or giving themselves a permission slip? I was like, one, does it serve the goal? Mm-hmm. Two, is it offensive? And I'm like, are you being rude? It just, you want to check that. It's like, well, of course not. And I'm like, does it serve the goal? Yes. I'm like, then that's, answering your questions. Like, use those as your own sort of filters to decide if you can or you cannot.
Let me give you an example of like when it really started to hit me. Like I was like, oh, me and Barbara need to talk about this. Like I'm starting to like watch a lot of TikTok. Like, of course, like I just, I finally gave in. I got the TikTok and I will spend a lot of time on TikTok. And I'm starting to get, okay, everything's feeling the same. All of the VOs are the same. The cuts are the same. Everything is the same because it's a formula that has worked for a lot of people. So it's okay if one or two other people try something different. That's all I'm saying. So if I'm seeing 45 people in a day in an audition, and every single one of you is coming in reading the same exact script, saying the same exact words, and keep in mind, remember in TV hosting specifically, Barbara, we don't describe what our TV host looks like. It's supposed to be personality traits and superpower traits. And are you empathetic? Can you chat? Do you love? All of those things.
Quick on your feet, relatable.
All things that like are you as a human being. It's never come in looking the part.
Correct.
So if 45 people come in the room and they're all reading or presenting the same exact thing and not making it their own by inserting things that could potentially be personal, and then I start to care about you, and guess what? I start connecting with you, and if I connect with you, then you are my TV host and I want to hire you. So if all the people that are coming in the room and they're not making it their own, they're all reading the same thing, like what am I using to gauge? Like, okay, well, they all can do the job, which is a lot of the space that we live in. It's like a lot of people can do the job, whether it's TV hosting or I'm going to interview to be my casting assistant. A lot of people can do the job.
So, exactly.
What is it that you're going to do on the phone, in the meeting, in an audition to make it your own? So I care about you, because if you just tweak something, a little thing, just tweak it, make it your own, all of a sudden I've connected with you as a human being versus a resume on a piece of paper. Does that make sense?
Oh, 1,000%. And that's what I wanted to point out is people get nervous about the personal. And it's to be clear that one, it's never too much information. It's not a TMI zone. It's not therapy. It's just personal is like I statements. Yeah. A lot of times it's opinion based, but it's not. And then again, opinions are not negative. Oh my gosh, that's my favorite. Oh my gosh, one of the greatest concerts, most memorable moments I ever had was Elton John at Dodger Stadium. To your point, because guess what? My energy just shifted. I'm like totally like connected. I've elevated everything to your point. Like that's so much about what you're bringing up is like, it's about energy. It's not about being different for the sake of different or weird or out there or outrageous or super extra, however, somebody wants to put it. It's just the idea that you found that way that feels, circles back to the authenticity question. It feels natural and real for you.
Yeah. And I keep driving this home, but like the minute you go personal on anything, okay. So I went on a date last night, right?
Ooh,
as you know, I'm in Palm Springs. I'm living my best life, meeting people. I went on a little date last night and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to go on this date and I'm going to be 100% authentically me and make it my own. Like I could have sat on that bar stool and had a very calculated thought process of like what I'm going to talk about. How long have you been here? Here's why I'm in Palm Springs. Why are you in Palm Springs? But I was like, screw that. This guy is not going to enjoy my company if I am answering in a like if I'm calculating the conversation, right? So like I made that date my own.
Okay, Sean, again, you just brought up such a great point because, on your end as the casting director or talent executive, you keep, referencing the idea that now I'm going to care, right? So what we're asking when you're on the talent side is you're showing up generously, right? It's about meeting people where they are. It's like when I share this about myself, it goes back to what Brian Pataka said on the podcast, that marketing is about sharing your gifts. And this is a version of that. Share parts of who you are, show up generously.
Who you are. And we witnessed this big time. I've shared, because you and I do a lot of work together. We witnessed it in the room. And I also share examples when you and I do our home shopping workshop together, and when I'm coaching individually, like I could just like rattle off like numerous examples of when people walked in the room and they made it their own, and all of a sudden, there's a client that you and I both worked with. Her name is Erin, and she had come up to New York to audition for me for a particular job. But the minute she walked in the room, she just made the room her own, which then led to like learning all of this awesome information about her and understanding why this job is so important to her and how this fits into her life. And all of that was the reason why she got the call back. We didn't even really need her to do what she was in the room for.
Exactly.
Because all of a sudden, because we connected with her from the making it your own part.
One of my favorite ones that I remember, and I'm pretty sure you were in the room, going way back, is Carson Kressley auditioning for Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. I'm sure it was a callback, but everyone has to remember, if you're listening to this, is Carson wasn't famous yet. He hadn't been on television yet. And he comes in and it's, a group of fashion experts, and Carson made it by his own, by going that extra mile. I just have such a visual of this. He walked in with his Steven Sprouse edition Vuitton tote luggage, and he was like Mary Poppins. And he just started pulling stuff out of the bag about like, here's some of the things that I think are essential for every, stylish man. And our jaws were on the floor. Did anybody else think to bring show and tell? No, he just demonstrated his passion and his calling and what he does every day. And I mean, I still to this day am just was so delighted by that. And of course he got the show.
So sidebar, I was not in the room for that particular day, but so listeners know, my first day ever as a casting assistant was a Queer Eye for the Straight Guy callback with you. You and I met at a coffee shop. We liked each other. You're like, come here the next day. And it was the Queer Eye callbacks. And that was my first day ever casting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess this was going into the working on the pilot, but it was just an amazing thing. And I'm just sharing that for everyone to have that permission slip, because it was so different and original. It was so true to Carson, and it was so appropriate for the situation. That's the other thing I want to point out. It added tremendous value to what we were doing. It wasn't wacky, original, or out there or different for its own sake, that you're like, what's going on here? Why are you? This was just like, this is wondrous. This person gets it. This person completely understands what we're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah, appropriate for the situation is key here, because specifically, when I'm working in the home shopping space, there's a lot of people who will come into those auditions or into those rooms and not really share anything about their favorite designer or their favorite gadget in the kitchen. I'm like, hello, this is QVC HSN, this is home shopping. Like, this is the world we're living in. Like, this is now the opportunity to tell me that you love your NutriBullet. But I don't want to know that you love your NutriBullet if I'm casting a VJ for a music channel. I want to know what your Spotify rap playlist thing, whatever they call it these days, because I don't have Spotify. But I want to know that. I want to know that. I don't care about your interest in your NutriBullet. So like what you were talking about.
Your NutriBullet while you're listening to your Spotify playlist.
But like you're saying, like appropriate to the situation.
100%.
Right?
Right. And by the way, for anybody listening who is interested in the home shopping space, and again, to Sean's point, I'm always the tougher one, because I will drill in and go, so who do you like on home shopping? And if you can't answer that, if you've definitely just revealed that you haven't watched and that you don't care, like, don't know that you're going to succeed in this space.
Yeah, I mean, we can really dig deep in like making things like super specific. Every audition needs to be super specific, just like every job interview needs to be super specific, right? You're not going to go interview at Google the same way you're going to go interview at an accounting firm.
I'm so glad that you just said that, because that's 100% true. And also that goes back to the personal is professional. You and I have been saying this for 20 years, and it still, though, is something that has not necessarily been internalized by everyone. And I do work with a lot of people in finance, and they'll say the exact same thing is, the resume has to tell your story. You have to stand out. And how do we do that? Is because you've made whatever corner of the universe your own, and you come in and you can express it.
It's not like you're bringing in cookies. It's not like you're coming in with like kissing ass, like, oh, I'm going to make some brownies. It's just like, I just want you to make it specific to you. That's all I care about.
I don't know why that just cracked me up so much.
Well, because
are cookies bad?
No, but like, I'm just saying, it's like, I'm not asking you to make it your own, is not asking you like, go make me a homemade cake. It's just coming in and being authentically you and making the whole entire situation personal.
Right. So you're finding some way to emotionally connect to what you're speaking about.
Yeah,
There's some way to add an I statement. Sometimes to be fair to your point, and especially working in the branded space, you will come in and the copy has been approved by 1,000 people and you can't change the words. So this is super next level. How do you make that your own? And it's one of my favorite things to work on. And that's when you start to understand, how do I communicate? What's my energy? And we look at your pacing and how do you pause? And where do you put emphasis? And how do you adapt language that you haven't written to how you speak? And then it's not, and by the way, I'm not trying to say it's easy, but it's 100,000% doable. And the most successful people that you hear, doing spots or on television have learned to do this. But I just want to give an example. It's like, there are many, many ways to make something your own, using your body language, your facial expressions, how you dress, your posture, all of those things that allow us to see how you are showing up and you are connecting and the value that you bring.
Yeah, good point. Like, it doesn't mean that you have to change the text, right?
Right. Oh, wait. And I did want to point out, because you and I have dealt with this before. Also, in the situations where you can change the text, which is great, you can't change the meaning of the text, because we have had situations where people like heard make it your own, and they kind of came in and rewrote the show and made it something else. And you're like, oh, no, that's not going to work, because the client's sitting there and this is their show and they're paying for it. So if you change it too much and now it's about something else, or the thing that we're promoting, you're actually making fun of, that's not going to work. So I just want to make that as pointing that out to anyone who might be hearing this thinking make it your own is like the full-on rewrite. No, you still have to say true to the.
It's not a rewrite, it's a tweak.
Yeah.
I always share with folks that I coach, like, number one, like, you're also allowed to ask. Yes, you can ask anything you want. Like, sure, shoot you back an email and say, hey, I got this copy. Do you mind if? And I always say, it's not Shakespeare. Like, the only thing you don't want to really change is Shakespeare. Like, Shakespeare, you don't change, right? Like, but to your point, like, yes, there are particular projects that we have cast that you cannot change anything. But yes, this is where I want to go with this conversation. Like, it's the way you present then is specifically you. Like, you and I talk very different when we're like, we are very animated, right? Especially when we're together, right? We've been friends for a really long time. So like, the way I am talking to you right now is very specific to Sean, right? And if you give me a script and I give you a script, and we're saying, okay, Sean and Barbara, you're going to present the same exact script on the paper. I'm guaranteed we're going to deliver differently, because number one, we're from different places, we're different ages, we have different life experiences, we have different point of views. So all of that has to be a part of this, which is great, because this is us now sharing, like, even if you have to say what's on the paper, you still can make it your own. And once you figure out how to do that, I guarantee that's why you get the callback. And that's this leading us back into TV and casting, because that's what I do. But like, I got to tell you, when I can feel it, and I know that my clients can feel it, I call it like a lean in moment. The not owning it is so sad for me, because some people are just so great at what they do, but when they don't make it personal and they don't own it, they lose out on opportunities that they're qualified for. But again, my client really didn't resonate because they didn't make it their own.
Well, you know what, to your point, and another not so subtle plug for our workshop, one of the most joyful and gratifying things that we do is when we start on day one, which is Saturday, right? And helping people work through this. And you can see, because the first time somebody demos a product for us, and it's very fact-based and functional, and we're like, oh, God, there's so much I like about you, but you're not, there's no ownership here, there's nothing personal. And by Sunday afternoon, when you see the transformation, that just, I don't know, just brings me tremendous joy. So I'm just plugging our class, because that is what we do in there. And one of the reasons, not only to say sign up, but also to explain that this is really doable. And it's not that it's going to take 6 months of your life to figure this out, or a 2-year conservatory course. It's like, we can take you from point A to point B.
Yeah, because it's not super skill set driven, which is what we do teach, right? And that's where you would take a class, etc. But yeah, like you referenced, like we can take you there.
Right. And to point it out, and what that is, and what those statements, and how you shift your energy.
I think that's great though. When you just said point it out, I think that's like, if I could just share a little bit about like my own process when I'm coaching talent, I feel like what I do a lot is, like, a lot of people come to me because they probably already have decent skill sets and they've been on TV before, or they want to like polish themselves a little bit, or maybe they have an audition that they're preparing for. And what I stress is like, gotta be able to pull out. So like, we can't, there's no rule book. There's no like, go to page 55 and it will tell you how to do this, right?
Well, I think they're best practices.
Yeah,
part
sure.
of it is just checking in with yourself, understanding how, asking yourself some specific questions. How do I feel about this? And then to your point, what are the clues in the copy? And in the home shopping, where there is no copy and then you have a product, what's the product saying to you?
And it's also, how do you feel?
Exactly. That's the whole point. This is an emotional connection. How do you feel about this?
Because all of a sudden, when I start feeling something, I get really excited. When I have a conversation with you in real life, I can plan as much. I can say, okay, I'm going to talk to Barbara about this. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about this. But all of a sudden, we're having a conversation, and I'm having emotions are coming up, because like, I'm like, oh my gosh, look at that poster on Barbara's wall. I went to a Dylan concert once. All of a sudden, I'm starting to feel something, right? So when you feel, we feel.
Oh, right? I like that. Say that again. When you feel, we feel.
When you feel, we feel. Yeah.
And when you share your feeling.
Yeah. It's nice to see people feel. It is, because you get excited. Let's go back to Erin. Let's go back to Erin in the room. I will never forget this. God, this audition had to be 8 years ago, if not longer. And to this day, and I share it in all of my sessions when I coach people, I will never forget the way Erin walked in that room and like just truly like just enjoyed the whole process. And I just truly felt like she was making everything her own. Like, I truly will never forget what she wore. I will never forget where I'm sitting. I won't forget where we were on 19th Street in Manhattan. I mean, the time of day, I remember everything, because like, it was like a real life moment.
I love that you just used the word enjoy, because we hadn't touched on that. And that is really, really important, because even if you're nervous, even if you're new, and then especially if you're super experienced, you've done this a million times, it is such a powerful thing when you convey that you're enjoying yourself, that there's no place you'd rather be than right there in that moment, sharing yourself with me, sharing that information with me, describing that product to me, giving your keynote or your TED talk to me. That is that transference of energy. And you're just like, I'm so glad to be here talking to you. That is such a gift. And also, we're all rushing around all day long. So to receive that kind of enjoyment is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I mean, but again, even on a job interview, like, let's take
exactly. No place I'd rather be than in this interview, as opposed to like scared. But I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm nervous, but I am so stoked to be here.
Yeah, and not like in a kiss ass kind of way, baking the cookies reference, like going in brown nosing, but like, you should want to be there. You should want to ask as many questions because you're curious and this is exciting for you.
And I genuinely want to work here, which is, by the way, and this has certainly come up in the audition space, I genuinely want to work here is different than I want a job or I want the job. Because of course you want to get a job or you want but to convey the energy that I'm really interested in working with you because I admire the work that you've done. I'm really interested in working with this brand because I admire the work that what the brand does. And I feel like I can bring value and our values are in alignment. That is a powerful, powerful thing. And so no matter who you are, that is a key soft skill that is essential to getting hired, is the sense that you really want to be there. You really believe in it. You're going to bring it, as opposed to like, yeah, I'd like to work there.
Yeah, explain. I mean, I know what you're getting at, but like maybe share. Like, I think that's what we were sort of like, the soft skill versus the tech skills, right?
Oh yeah,
like,
the hard skills. The hard skills is actually, you know, being able to string a sentence together. In the television space, that's often, you know, being able to read a teleprompter, being able to do interviews. In many other industries that might be able, you know, like how you do spreadsheets or how you run a marketing campaign, any of those things, whatever the hard skills are. And that's, by the way, that's usually what gets you in the door. And we look at that list, and that goes back to what we're talking about. It's like, you know, must be able to this many years of experience, you know, you're like, check. The soft skills are what you bring. Those are your points of differentiation. Those are, you know, your strengths.
Well, the reason why I wanted you to, that's great. And why I wanted to sort of talk through that is because that's what I'm trying to get at. Like, these are soft skills that, like, you know, you and I can help you sort of find, right? But it's not so textbook.
Oh, it's not textbook at all. But you know what, to that point, another friendly plug that I'm going to put in off of my website is my favorite personal branding tool is the How to Fascinate assessment. I have a link to it on my website. It just takes you right there and you can sign up for it, because I meant like for anyone who's struggling to understand what their superpowers may be, that's exactly what the assessment points out for you. It's fantastic.
Oh, wait, where do we go?
Yeah, just to my homepage.
Okay.
abelintermedia.com.
Awesome.
It says, are you ready to stand out? Yes, I am. Click here.
I will be doing that when we hang up.
Oh, I'm obsessed with it. It was created by an advertising executive named Sally Hogshead. But to your point, so it's the hard skills get you in the door, the soft skills, you know, get you the job, and everybody
get you the callback, the job,
absolutely,
the phone call to follow up, whatever it might be,
whatever that is. But that's the it. So Sean, everyone needs to connect with you, and how can they do that?
They can connect with me on my website through email at sean@seandsimonecasting.com, or they can connect with me on my Facebook group, which is the Sean D. Simone Casting Facebook group, which I love, or they connect with me on Instagram, which is Sean_D_Simone_casting. I also have a phone number listed on my website because I take calls. I want to talk to people. You know, if you're interested in working with me, give me a ring. And I am coaching away. I take one-on-one clients where I coach people individually on TV hosting, and I'm casting lots of fun things. So make sure you do connect with me and follow those socials, because I share all my castings there. And in a few weeks, you and I will be teaching hosting for home shopping and brands, February
11 and 12.
11 and 12.
To sign up, just go to abelintermedia.com.
Yeah, or call me if you have any questions. I love talking people through why the class is so special.
You're the best.
Yeah,
I love how generous you are.
Like it.
That's awesome. Well, I want to thank everyone for listening. I want to thank you, Sean, for your four-peat. If you are interested in media coaching for you or your team, please shoot me a note, and please be sure to visit abelintermedia.com and download my free ebook, 12 Tips for Success on Camera. And as always, please be sure to hit the subscribe button if you have not already.